everyone, and welcome to Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails, the weekly podcast that helps you grow your business, improve your life, and enjoy yourself along the way. I'm your host, Allan Langer, and every week we try to bring you the best thought leaders, the best business leaders, and the best minds out there to help you succeed in business and in life. So sit back, relax, grab your pad, your pen, and your favorite beverage, and enjoy the next episode of Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another segment of Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. This is your host, Allan Langer, and we are at episode 33. This is 33 in the bank already. And I think I've got one of our top guests, and I've had some pretty good guests, but we've got a good one coming up today, and Mr. Chris Walker of LinkedIn fame and Refine Labs fame. But before we get to Chris, just a couple of quick notes. Remember, everyone, the podcast website is marketingandsalespodcast.com. And remember the Ask Allan segment. We've been getting a lot of great feedback and questions. If you send me a question through the website and I do read your question on the air, you get a free autographed copy of my book sent to you at no charge. So send those questions in. We've got a really good one coming up, and it's really, it's going to be in Chris's wheelhouse. And he actually told me, don't read me the question now. I want to be surprised. So we'll see how he handles that. So Chris Walker, thanks for joining me. Welcome to the show today.
Allan, happy to be here, man. I just want to be transparent for the audience. I have this greenberry juice, no cocktails for me right now, but really happy to be on the show and look forward to chatting with you.
No problem. So this is, normally we record this in the evening, but you can see it's still a little light behind Chris. He's in Boston, I'm in Providence, but I am taking advantage of happy hour time. So I have Sangiovese right here. So here you have to do a virtual cheers though, whether it's alcohol or not. So here we go.
Cheers to everyone.
All right. Thanks, Chris. So a little bit about you. I mean, I like to have my guests talk about themselves rather than me talk about you, but you are the founder and the CEO of Refine Labs, which is a marketing agency, for lack of a better term, I would assume, right?
Yeah, we're a blend between a consultancy and agency. We've been going for about 18 months. Cool.
So I've seen you on LinkedIn. That's where I engage with you, and we've chatted. And your posts on LinkedIn always get thousands of likes and engagements and stuff, because it's so, your stuff is just really so smart. If for lack of a better term, you have smart stuff and you look at things differently. So why don't you tell everyone how you got to where you are, and how'd you get to this line of thinking, which I really love because it's a little off the beaten path.
Yeah. Before we get into that, I just want to drop in something that I have not said to on a podcast before publicly, is that I'm getting a lot of traction on LinkedIn, but I want people to understand that I've been producing business content for social platforms since 2013.
Oh,
and it
wow.
just so happened. And so it doesn't just pop up and go. Like I've done a video podcast since 2015. I've been creating content for Facebook and Instagram and other platforms since 2013. And then this was the time. And so I just want to try and reiterate that it often takes a lot of time for that spark to happen, some quicker than others. But it just came to a right time where there was a lot of organic reach on LinkedIn, and I understood the dynamics of platforms, and I had kind of figured out my craft and my message. And so it all worked out. But I think work and patience was a huge part of it.
Well, and I think that's a great point. Maybe we'll touch on that later, because I think a lot of people, especially with LinkedIn, thinks it's like an overnight thing. Like, I'll just start posting and immediately I'll have 50 customers next week. It's a long play. And
it's a long play.
And you have to
be doing it for the right reasons, or you're going to give up.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a great point. And I knew you had other social media stuff, but that's really good to tell everyone else that as well. So
cool. So let's get into your actual question. And so, where do I start? And so I studied engineering in college, mainly because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I was like smart at math, and at that point hadn't really explored, like, the idea of marketing had not even hit my radar. It was like, marketing, a low paid job. I'm not really sure. It just like, I think a lot of people that are younger might resonate with this, is that, like, until you actually get out there, you don't really know what's possible. And so that was interesting. It's also a really nice background for me. I think that it gives me an edge over a lot of marketers because I understand systems. I understand how to write code. I understand how to develop products. I understand how to run statistical calculations and understand all of those different pieces, which I now use in marketing in combination with psychology and creative and copywriting and messaging and all the other components that are important. And so studied engineering, and then I got really lucky. I had a couple job offers coming out of college, but one of them stuck out to me, which was basically this very large British holdings company that owned 60 technology and engineering companies around the globe. And they called it the graduate trainee program, but it was basically like, it was an MBA in a box. It was amazing. You would go into these companies that were ranging somewhere between 10 million and 200 million in revenue. You would get to understand their business and solve a key business problem. And so I got a lot of different experience in product management and lean manufacturing and cost of goods sold. And these companies were all highly profitable. And so I took all of that experience and then I moved over to the venture world 4 years later after working at that company and having quite a bit of success there. And I just it was a complete 180, right? I'm working at companies that are making 70%, 90% gross margins. And that's not too different from SaaS, but the P&L at those companies are 40% net profit. And then you go to venture funded and it's not, right. It's just not the same, which was interesting. It was a nice baseline for me. And then I moved into venture funding companies and started to understand what is the cost to acquire a customer? How are we going to market, like these different components? And that's where it started to click, where it was like, oh, some of this stuff that I've been working on before set me up to do very well here. And then just started executing. Like I'm happy to go into some details there, but like 2015 to now has been a consistent iterative and learning process among a lot of different venture funded, both hardware and software companies. And just consistently trying to learn. The dynamics of all these things change so fast. Like the stuff I was doing in 2015, yes, pillars are the same, but there are so many nuances that change. And so I find that a lot of marketers and business owners, for that matter, kind of get stuck in what they were doing before, and don't necessarily consistently fact check and try and iterate and innovate from there.
Well, it seems the one thing I always get from you is that it seems like you're always testing and you're like, okay, this is what they did in the past. That doesn't work anymore. This is what's so much better, but people are still stuck in the past. Like you said, it's the same with sales. But
yeah, and the key for these people, and I have a lot of empathy for this now because I work with a lot of very smart people that are in that kind of bucket where they're just kind of stuck, is that in order to acknowledge that what you're doing right now isn't working, you need to know what else to do. You need to know something better to do. And I think a lot of people just haven't seen the things that I've seen and seen in real life, how it can work, and therefore think that what they're doing is best practice.
Right. And sometimes, they know they need to make a change, but it's hard to do. Change is hard, to do anything.
Totally.
Even sometimes, even if it's not working or you can actually double your revenue, but you're still making money, why mess with it? Why try to change it? So it's just, I run that into sales. It's like, well, a typical company in sales, their sales processes are basically designed for a 30% close. They're happy if their guys are closing 30%, they're 35 maybe. When I go in and say, well, we can probably get it up to 50%, they're like, they don't believe it. It's like, how's that possible? But it just takes some change and mind shifting. So, yeah. So I would assume it's the same in marketing as well, where you have to actually show them what can be done and why it's not working or why they can make more money doing it this way than what they're doing now, right?
Yeah, I mean, step one is acknowledging that what's happening today is not working, right? Yeah. And so being able to just get everyone on the same page about that, and what it all stems from is the metrics that come down from executives that drive certain marketing behaviors that then it hits the goals of the executive set, and it's also not working, which is really interesting to think about. Yeah, and I run into this position a lot with venture funded companies, that marketing is destroying, crushing, exceeding all of the goals that they have set, and the sales team missed, 60%, 70% of the sales team missed quota. And so how are those two things happening at once? I think that's a common thing that people talk about a lot, and they've been talking about it for the past 5-10 years, and it's oddly still not solved in a lot of companies. And so that's what we help people fix. Like, marketers need to understand sales.
So that's a great segue to my next question, because I've done a lot of presentations on how marketing and sales need to be aligned. They need to talk every day. They need to know what each other's doing. How do you go when you see that happening, when you see marketing coming in with all these great leads and sales teams just not being able to convert? What do you do with that? How do you get that? How do you get them aligned? Does it start from the top down?
So that's not usually the issue that we find, actually. I mean,
oh, really?
So what the issue that we find, marketing generating a lot of leads that aren't good, and sales can't convert them because the leads aren't good.
Oh,
and then if you actually look, there's like the specific types of leads that sales converts very well that marketing doesn't actually focus on driving. And so it's like, why don't we just focus on these ones that sales is winning at, 12% raw lead to win?
Right.
Pretty damn good. And so why don't we just try and focus on getting more of those? But because the metrics are set that you need a bajillion leads, you actually have to do things that create bad leads in order to hit that number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a cycle. Absolutely.
And so so when you're in these types of companies, and I've been an employee and now I work with a lot of them from an external perspective, is that for however long of time, this marketing team has been driving thousands of bad leads into sales. And so sales no longer even cares about them. Mm-hmm. So even the good ones that are coming in passively that manage to close because they want the product so bad, the sales isn't able to distinguish what's going on because of how it's delivered. And they've also had their judgment taken. And so you actually need to sort of change the mindset of the sales reps that, hey, like, the game has changed now. We're not going to drive a billion leads, but the ones that we're going to give you are really good.
They're really good. Yeah.
And that's really the difference. It's cutting out all the noise.
God, I wish every company should, it's just it seems like such a simple thing, but it's not, because I spent a lot of time in the in-home sales world. I worked for Anderson Windows for many years, and talk about a lead machine. They would spend, I don't know, $25 million.
Companies that are in financial services that, just lead machine of bad leads.
Yes, bad lead. You got, for example, you're selling a $2,000 window, and they're sending you to a house that's worth $80,000. It just doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's such a problem.
Where I learned this is actually working with 40 field sales reps. Mm-hmm. And understanding their objectives and understanding how they think, which then empowered me to realize that sending them all those things is not good.
Yeah.
That actually it does the opposite of what you want. And I was lucky to work at a company that didn't have lead targets. In fact, didn't even really know what I should be doing or how I should be measured at that point in 2015. And so I got to set those things. And for whatever reason, I look back, I'm really fascinated. It's like, why did I decide to do it that way, which is so far against current, like, quote unquote, best practice.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's interesting.
So a lot of the listeners to this podcast are solopreneurs, small business owners, really out there busting their humps. What do you see? Like, how do you tell that person they're not looking at the cost of a customer? They're just trying to get leads on Facebook and social media and things like that, as opposed to these big companies that, have all of these metrics. What do you tell the small business owner on what to do?
So in my experience, typically the solopreneur, small business owner, the problem is actually on customer acquisition, not delivery of product. Mm-hmm. I think that will resonate with a lot of people. And the way that it also depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you're just trying to be a solopreneur, then like maybe you don't need to do some of the advice I'm about to give right now. If you're trying to like build a business and have employees and do things, then you need to figure out how to grow top line revenue in a predictable, consistent way that continues to grow. Right. And so that's a decision that everyone that's listening to this needs to make, is like, if you want to just work less hours, not be an employee of a company, work for yourself, have more flexible hours, and still make like probably more than you would working at a company, then this advice may not be for you. But for those that want to build, the advice is really is you need to think about building a brand, not about collecting a bunch of leads and trying to sell them something. You want to figure out how the market can come to you to get whatever you're selling versus you trying to, get 100 leads and call as many as you can and hope that you close one out of those 100, which is probably pretty unlikely, actually. And so I think those are the differences, and I'm sure that you have follow-ups on tactics and things like that. Yeah.
I mean, the thing I learned, and I think because of this year, now this podcast is going to come out in 2021, but we are recording in 2020. We're coming in the tail end of this awful, weird, strange year that we all had.
Been weird.
Yeah. But I think so many people had to figure out or reinvent themselves. I was one of them. My main stuff was always speaking. I would do a speaking engagement, walk out of there with 5 to 10 possible clients, and I was good. And then boom, all that disappeared overnight. So that's where I learned how to use LinkedIn. I found guys like you and putting out the organic content and building a brand. And that goes back to what you said at the beginning, that long play. When I coach solopreneurs, I start on LinkedIn with them. Like, you have to start here. This is where your business is. Would you agree with that?
I've been giving it weird advice, even for people that don't think that LinkedIn is the place.
Yeah.
So the virtual fitness consultant.
Yeah.
would be doing a lot better on LinkedIn than they are on Instagram if they don't have a base built on Instagram already. Instagram's saturated. And then you can probably get way higher prices by selling your fitness stuff to executives versus some random person on Instagram. And so I've been trying to help people kind of change their mindset. Instagram is such it's just like a popular platform. And so I think people feed in from an ego standpoint. But obviously business professionals are skewing to LinkedIn right now for a lot of different reasons. And so I think the first place to start is by deeply understanding your customer and who you're going after. It's something that we consistently iterate on, and who we sell to today is way different than what we did 18 months ago. And it consistently changes. It's something that as we learn, we're feeding that back in and deciding, no, these people, this actually is something that makes them unlikely to be successful with us versus that. And then as you continue to chip away at who is the right fit, all of the things that you put out on LinkedIn are way more relevant to that exact person because and so, yes, but in general, business solopreneur, putting out content on LinkedIn is a good idea. Yeah,
agree. And to your point, find your client avatar, sign up for Sales Navigator, find who your client is, and that's what your content should be relegated towards. So,
the thing for people that I just want to explicitly kind of call out here, that I think it's a tough mindset shift for almost everyone that I talk to get over, is that if people listen to all the things that I say on LinkedIn, they wouldn't necessarily need to hire me. And I think that is the approach that I've taken, because whether I tell them right now or they're going to find out in 3 to 6 months when people figure it out, I'm just ahead of everyone else. And so the mindset shift is to, just by giving away the information that you right now package and sell, you feel like people aren't going to need you when you do it, but it actually creates way more affinity.
Great point, because that's one of the biggest pushbacks I get when I say,
me too.
Yeah, put out content, put out valuable content. Well, I'm not going to give away my secrets. I'm like, trust me, they're not going to be able to do your secrets like you can do them. Yeah, and they're going to want.
It creates trust. It creates credibility. It creates awareness by putting out good information. More people consume, more people know about you, more people recommend you.
Yep.
It's been a really interesting kind of segment right here in Q3, Q4 for us, where at the beginning, a lot of our stuff was feeding off of my own LinkedIn posts, and then it started moving into the podcast. The podcast is still a great channel for us, but lately in sales calls, most of it's been I talked to this random person that Chris, have never heard about, but they talked to this random person that said that they should come and talk to me.
Yeah.
And that's when you start getting this effect where it builds. Like people are always in sales mode,
Yeah.
but sales mode doesn't scale like brand does.
Yes. What a great point. What a great point. And the other thing to keep in mind is the term, I don't know if I don't know where I heard the term at one point, but we call them lurkers, the people who actually follow you, but never like or never comment, but they're there
100%.
all the time.
It's all the CMOs that I'm after.
Yeah. It's like when you do let's say you do a video post and you get 50 likes and 60 comments, but 2,000 people viewed it. That's 1,900 people that looked at your content that didn't say anything. I think a lot of your potential customers are there
themselves. Totally.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So don't forget about your lurkers, because I had a client the other day said, "Oh, I only got 25 likes." I said, so I called up her post and she had 1,200 views. I'm like, yeah, 1,175 people.
What is only 25 likes? 25 people reached out and said that they love your content. That's 25 more than some other person.
And 25 more than you had yesterday.
Exactly. And so I think people in search of these like huge numbers are taking for granted the numbers that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to switch gears to something because I think people struggle with this too. And I got this question or an idea for this question from your website. So on your website, you actually have the prices of your packages. And I go back and forth with this. Many people ask about that. Should I put my pricing, my coaching pricing on my website, or should I cater it toward what the actual, client, my discussion with the client? Tell me why you went that way and your reasoning.
So the first thing is that we have become so narrow in the type of customer that we work for that the offering is no longer custom.
Okay.
Right. And so like we know who fits into this profile, and we know that that is the right price point based on the value that's delivered. And we know all these other people that are going to submit that aren't going to be the right fit, and we'll disqualify them out because we're not the right person to help them in that. So one is being very defined on who you serve in order to facilitate this. The second step is acknowledging that giving people more information so they can make a decision is just more buyer centric.
I love it.
Right.
Yep.
And so
I couldn't agree more.
That's the next step in full transparency. And then the third thing that people will recognize is that oftentimes it will rid you of some of the people that are not able to afford what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do that because I advise my customers to, and anything that I tell my customers to do, I do myself.
Yeah. And I love that. I have a whole chapter in my book about pricing. And I love the fact to show the price up front, because for those three reasons that you just said, you got someone who can afford $1,000 and they're looking at Chris Walker because you came recommended. They're like, oh crap, I can't deal with 15,000 or whatever it is that you charge. And the people that I get detractions from is like, well, I want to talk them into, I want to tell them what I can give them and build the value first.
Yep. I do that way before they're on the website. Right. The people that come to the website are already done.
Yeah. Yeah. And
that's my objective. I just realized that there are other places that where that needs to get done.
Exactly. They're not starting on your website. They're going to your website because they saw your content.
People that do it on the website are based in search, are based in someone finding you in Google and then coming through where they have no affinity to your brand. They just found you in Google. I'm trying to have way affinity to the brand. So they're not searching in Google marketing agency. They're searching Refine Labs, Chris Walker pricing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is the core difference. And I'm going to talk about that a lot tonight, later on the podcast, which is that on my podcast, is that Google gets way more credit than it deserves completely, because people pass through Google to finish their buying process, but they started somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So every company that's focused on search doesn't realize how much other touch points are mattering to it. And they give way too much credit to search, and they spend more money on paid search and organic search, SEO type work.
Yeah.
And it's the wrong decision right now.
That's a brilliant thing, because you're right. You don't want to start on the website. I love when people contact me from the website form, but they said they found me on LinkedIn or wherever they found me. Yeah,
they're not looking for something like what you do. They're looking for you. That is the difference.
There's a huge difference.
And so every solopreneur or aspiring business owner or whoever is in there should have a goal of getting to that point. where you are the top of mind, top choice. They might not need you today, but if they need whatever you do in the future, that they go into Google and search for you, not the category of what you do.
Well, I have a great example of the lurkers. It happened this morning, actually. I got a DM on LinkedIn from a guy who started following me in March. And he said, Allan, I've been watching your stuff since March. I love it. Never heard from him, never posted a like, never a comment. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'd like to talk to you about some training for my sales team. Boom.
Totally.
8 months after watching me. So crazy stuff. It really is.
Yeah. It's just because they not everyone has the problem that you solve today.
Right.
Right. And that's just, and so being able to help them understand that situation and the potential opportunities of doing something differently over time is a good idea.
Yeah. So you mentioned your podcast. I'd like to hear a little more about it. Tell the audience about your podcast, because I'm sure some of them who don't know about it would like to head on over there.
Yeah, so it's called Stated Demand Gen. It's a very B2B SaaS marketing focused podcast. Mm-hmm. I would say probably one of the top 3 in that like very small niche. Mm-hmm. And we got it started officially right around the time that lockdown happened in COVID. We've been doing a lot of like video podcasts, but didn't actually officially make it an audio podcast. It was mainly at the beginning made to be chopped up and then published on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And so we started moving it to a podcast in April and have been able to consistently grow that channel on a couple key pillars. The first one is a unique perspective. The second one is we do a live Q&A Zoom for like, it'll happen tonight for like 90 to 120 minutes where people just come on and ask me questions, and it's free consulting. And then we put it on the podcast, which is one of the people's most favorite content pillars.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yep. So we do that every Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Consistency. We publish podcasts 3 to 4 times a week.
Wow.
Which has been a huge driver to why it's so successful, mm-hmm. I believe. And so those are the types of things that have been part of the unique like formula. We've been able to grow that very fast. It's our number 1 business driver right now.
No kidding. Is it always live, or or some of them recorded? Like the Tuesday night is obviously it's live.
Tuesday nights are always live.
Okay, and is it live on Facebook or LinkedIn?
It's live via Zoom.
Via Zoom. Okay, so you just send out the link and people
send out the link. People show up. Usually it's somewhere between like 40 and 100 wow. people, sales reps, demand marketers, solopreneurs, other people that are interested, and then we just go through and answer questions and have fun.
Send me that link, man. I've never seen that link. I want to join one Tuesday night.
We'll do.
As long as I don't have a date. Tuesday's my night off, so sometimes I can't go out too much anymore, though. So we have the Ask Allan segment of the podcast, and I've been looking forward to this. I may have kind of messed it up because you may have answered a little bit of this question, but maybe not. But I don't think we'll see. So this comes from. Well, by the way, for people to do this, again, go to Marketing and Sales Podcast, go to the contact section, send me the question. We'll read it on the air. You get a free book. This one comes from Trish in St. Petersburg, Florida. And she writes, I own a small online business. She doesn't write what it is, but I own a small online business that does about 10K per month in revenue. I want to double that in 2021. I currently only do organic outreach, mostly on Facebook and Instagram. I'd like to know if and where I should start advertising online, if I should at all.
All right, Trish. I appreciate the question. First off, getting to 10K a month is a huge deal. Like,
yeah.
So I think we should celebrate that piece first. The next thing that I would offer here is your goal for next year should be 100K a month, not 20K a month. And when you change your goal, you actually change what you do. So it's not about whether or not you get there. It's about setting your mind like 10 to 20 is incremental. And so when you set the bar bigger, which is something that I did when we had 0 in revenue, I was figuring out how we're going to get to $1 million. It makes you make investments early because you know where you're trying to get to. So use that for yourself and try and figure out what the end goal is, and then start to work backwards. But I think for you, changing the goal, the target would actually be helpful in what you do on a day-to-day basis. And then from there, I would not go to paid. Your 10K a month business, I don't know how much it costs. I don't think that you're going to be able to acquire customers, especially given the way that you answered the question, at a rate that makes sense. I would lean, depending on what the product is, I would lean heavily on either LinkedIn or TikTok.
Okay.
And I would produce organic content there. And let's just pretend, like, just for the listeners here, let's just go through the scenario. Let's pretend that it's $1,000 a month. So you currently have 10 customers. In order to get to your goal of doubling to 20, you would need 10 more customers with good retention metrics. And so on LinkedIn, you could get that pretty quickly. I just think that is the right move. I do not, just for as like a baseline for most people, I do not recommend paid advertising sub $1 million in annual revenue, mainly because it forces you to figure out how to acquire it organically.
Got it.
I think it's just a good mindset, because if you start running advertising and it's not working, there's two things that are going to happen. One, you're not going to spend enough to actually figure out whether or not it can work, because the revenue is too small and you're too conservative. Oh, I spent $50, it didn't work, I'm going to stop. And you get a false negative there. Or you go way over the top and spend too much, and then you actually don't make any profit on your existing customer base, because you're like, oh, we spent $5,000 and it didn't work, and that was all my margin.
Yeah.
And so I really would recommend figuring out an organic channel, and I guess LinkedIn in combination with podcasts, which is what I've been doing for 18 months, is the right path.
Talk to me a little bit about, and Trish, thanks you. That was an excellent question. About TikTok. I just started playing around with TikTok myself. I got a tutorial from my 12-year-old to figure stuff out. Yeah. But I mean, can business professionals be popular or be successful on TikTok?
Yeah, that's why I said depending on the audience, because like I'm not deep into TikTok right now. We're playing around with the ad product just to understand it, but like organically, like I think I might have an account, but we don't publish there just because like who I'm going after is not there. Right. So, Trish, if you are selling to, 23-year-old women on like a coaching product, like you might want to be there. You know what I mean? It's probably a better option than LinkedIn. Yeah. Right. And so I think that was the key distinction. The key is that those two platforms have a much better opportunity than Facebook and Instagram right now. Especially advertising. You're talking about don't do any advertising at all, which I think is the best advice you gave her, because you're so right about that, especially with like you said, the sub-million. You should be able to get those customers organically. And people think that advertising is necessary, and it's usually not. For big companies that are trying to scale up, which is a lot of the companies that we help. Yeah, we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a month for these companies, but they are trying to grow. Right. And they're, already 30 to 200 million in revenue. And just like, it's a different scale here. Sure. So my recommendation is against advertising at that stage. Cool. All right. I'm gonna ask one last question, and this has been awesome, please. Chris. It always goes so quick with awesome guests. You mentioned, and I love what you mentioned to her. You said, don't go for 20 grand a month, go for 100. Set your goal there. A lot of people talk about goals. I'm a big goal setter. Tell us how you set your goals. When you said, okay, I was at zero revenue, I want to get to $1 million. Did you write it down every day? Did you visualize it? Did you put it on a board? Tell us how you physically approached that goal to get to that point. Yeah, so I'll get to that, but this is more on framing your mind about where you're trying to go, and then it allows you to make decisions in a different way, right? So it goes from incremental to very large decisions. And so like right now we're getting ready to hire like infrastructure, finance, sales, like all of these different things at our stage that we probably wouldn't do if we were thinking incrementally about next year. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so there's just it varies in different types of stages. Like when we were at 15K a month of revenue, I was getting ready to hire my first person because I knew that we were trying to get to $1 million, what I mean? Right. And so like people that are at 15 would be like, oh, 15 is good. I'll just get a little extra money every month. And I'm like, no, we know where we're trying to get to. And so I think it's really helpful on that time frame. When we do actual like goal setting, I typically like to set, in my head, I'm thinking way in the future, but in terms of like the actual goal, now there's 15 people on the team. We actually set conservative goals so that the team feels like they're winning. Yeah. I think
Yep.
it's super important when I've been inside of companies that set goals of 50% growth at 50 million in revenue, and the entire company feels like they're playing from behind the whole year because the goals were unrealistic, and that's not a fun place to be for anyone. I
Right.
would much rather be celebrating 30% growth than the team feeling like they're way behind their goal when the goal was 50.
Mm-hmm.
And so we go through that process. We use historical. At this point, we have pretty good historical data on retention metrics and customer acquisition metrics and growth targets and what's in the pipeline right now. And so we can make pretty educated, conservative decisions on where we'll end up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's generally the process we use, like Excel in the details, right? Like we have a
Yeah.
pretty good financial model built. But I think that the take home of what I was trying to communicate was really in the mindset. When I zoom out, I typically do this on Sundays for whatever reason, because I feel like they're free of distractions and I can get really creative as I sit down when I feel good. And I'm like, okay, so what is this place going to look like when we're 20 million in revenue?
Mm-hmm.
And then I start to figure out what are the things that we're going to need. What is that going to look like? Are we going to need an office? Are we going to have 6 offices? What infrastructure we need? How many customers are we going to have? How much are they going to be paying us? How many employees are we going to have? And then you start to work backwards.
Yeah. Reverse engineering is so important, and so many people don't even do it. They don't think that way.
And then and then you start to get to a priority. Do I need a CFO right now, or do we need a CFO in 2022? Do we need this? Do we need that? And you can start to work in. So I kind of do a visionary look and then a very practical look in Excel and try and move them together.
Do you write these things down? Do you have a Chris Walker, notebook on the side of your bed, or like where do you put your personal stuff, and where do you put everything like you're talking
Yeah,
about?
I've been recently over the past month, I've been doing a lot of journaling, mainly just like get my thoughts out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I end up in a lot of like really interesting places when you actually like sit down and do it and kind of just let the words come out. And so those have been interesting for sort of like ideation and reflection. And then on a monthly basis, I'm writing down, I have one sheet of paper, and it's what are the things that need to get done this month? It's usually 3 to 4 things in 4 core buckets, which is people, process, results, innovation. And there's 3 or 4 things in each one that if I get these done, then we've moved the needle significantly. Mm-hmm. So I have that sitting on my desk waiting for me every day. And then in the tactical, I have a similar list that happens every day.
Right.
And that's kind of how I break stuff down. So it's easy at this level to start to get distracted on things that aren't important. So I find it's great to center on, what are really the right things.
I love asking that question to see how different people tackle that, their daily tasks versus their goals and their things like that. So that's really cool stuff. I love the 4. Can you mention those 4 buckets again? That's really interesting.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people look at it this way, especially once you have employees and different things. People, process, results, innovation.
Wow, I love that. People, process, results, and innovation. Write that down, everybody. I know you all have pens and paper, so love it. Well, Chris, this has been awesome. We're already running out of some time. You're the best. I know you're in Boston. I definitely want to, when COVID is hopefully behind us, meet for
a real cocktail
face to face someday, because you're not far from me at all. But I really want to thank you for joining me. I definitely want to hop on one of your Tuesday night things. So I'll remind you to send me
Zoom.
Yeah, shoot me the Zoom link. And everyone else, I want to thank you for joining me. I want to thank Chris Walker personally for being on Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. Remember, go to the marketingandsalespodcast.com, send me a question. We read it. You get a free signed book by me. All right, everyone. This has been episode number 33 of Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. We will see you again next time.
Cheers, everyone.